Well, session host, is there anything we should talk about at the beginning of the session?
Don't think so, other than if you want anything specific in chat or any specific format that that you have going on. Otherwise, you guys are ready to roll.
All right, sounds good. Well, it looks like we've got a great turnout of people to come and talk and share and become one. That's kind of the goal today. Now, in chat, if anybody's looking for it, we have a copy of our presentation. You're welcome to go jump in and take it as you go, use anything from our presentation today. But what we're going to talk about is accessibility, universal design for learning, and unifying efforts in our resource-constrained system. We have lots of us here today. And wonderful people. Janet's in and Tomas. We've got great people. Diana, I love it, all the good conversations. And Catherine had a great presentation this morning. I'm loving all the participants. This is great. So fun to have people in there. Now, let me see if I can move forward a little bit. I want to talk. So we're going to be having kind of a discussion, a panel discussion about what's happening on campus. And it's really open. So all of you are welcome to speak. If you have a question you want to ask, you're welcome to drop it into chat. If you want to ask something in person. All right. Leonie's here. Yay. Thank you so much. But if you were looking for any of that, we should have the ability of doing reactions where you can raise your hand if you're looking for it. So feel free to participate as you'd like. But I thought maybe what we could do to start today is talk a little bit about who's here. So we have some representation of different people on campus, and you can see their names on campus, or on our slide today. But I was wondering if maybe we could start by Kate. Would you introduce yourself?
Certainly. Hi, everyone. Kate Miller, and I'm with the Office of Information Technology for both CU Denver and CU Anschutz. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you and looking forward to the discussion.
Oh, thanks, Kate. Really excited. Mike, would you go next?
Yeah, you bet. Mike Williamson on CU Boulder's campus. And I run our accessibility and usability lab, which is accessibility testing, consulting, so on and so forth. And then I also head up the procurement, accessibility procurement. So making sure that things that we purchase, at the very least, the vendor agrees to accessibility terms in the contract. So anyway, that's kind of boring. So I'm going to shut up and let whoever goes next.
Hey, I appreciate it. It's really fun to have Mike's perspective in here today as we get to kind of play. Now, Lena, are you here? I know you're on your phone. You've got other things going on, but I didn't know. Oh, look at you on your phone.
Hi, I'm sorry. I did have a unexpected appointment. So I'm standing outside the doctor's office right now. But my name is Lena Bencomo. I'm the assistive technologist at University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. And so mostly I assess students and work with them on technology, but we have a pretty lean staff down here. So the other thing I do is work with faculty and help them create accessible material and universally designed spaces, as well as staff on occasion, even physical spaces I work with. And most recently, I created a universal design awareness and application course for the OIT department, utilizing the United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum as an example, good and bad examples of accessibility they've done there.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to tie it into things happening in the world today. I like that. Well, thanks for joining us from the sidewalk. Greatly appreciate your time today. This is great. Yeah. Okay. And my name is Brad Grabham. I'm a learning experience designer in CU Boulder. I work in the Office of Information Technology, and I'm part of the Academic Technology Applications and Design group. So I get to help build classes and do pilots and get to work with fun people. And my real interest is around universal design for learning. How do we remove barriers for our students and make it a more inclusive environment for all of us, which Catherine really started us off on today with some inclusive design work. Thank you. But how about Laura? Would you introduce yourself too?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Laura Hamrick. I also work at CU Boulder in the Digital Accessibility Office with Mike and Rachel. And I have a very vague title. So I am the strategy and outreach manager, but essentially I manage our campus captioning service, a variety of training efforts across campus, primarily those directed at sort of everybody but developers, basically. So more like general trainings. And also conduct a lot of outreach and collaboration with different departments on campus, managing various projects related to digital accessibility. And then I also manage some of the research efforts in our group around student experiences, captioning, things like that.
Oh, thank you, Laura. That's a wonderful intro. Yes, and I like it. You kind of have a lot of different hats you're wearing on campus. I like that. Rachel, how about you? You're our newest addition to the fun.
Hi, thanks, Brad. Yes, I am still fairly new to CU, though I did teach at CU many years ago. I am back as the accessibility training specialist. I'm really happy to be here. I work with Laura in training faculty and staff on areas around digital accessibility. Yeah, and I work with Brad sometimes too in presentations. So it's just all around good time.
Yeah, I like that. Good times. That's what we're here for today over our lunch break. I hope some people have their cameras off and you're snacking a little bit and getting a break. The first half of the conference is going well today for you. So now today, what we're really going to be talking about is kind of our campus goals. You know, what we're trying to do is all of our campuses have the same goal of creating a rich learning experience for all faculty, staff, and students. We strive to become leaders promoting universal access for all of our users. And today's objective, what we really want to get out of this today is really just to have the beginning of a conversation about accessibility and universal design for learning initiatives on our different campuses and discuss different ways that we can meet our goals of creating a rich learning experience for all and sharing. You heard from us talk about there's different things happening on different campuses. And I love Lena's example of using the Olympics. I thought that was a great one. So it's just kind of fun to talk about what's happening. And I'm hoping we can really use this today as just being a way to share and be able to catch up with different people. And thank you. I'm going to call Catherine. Kath, thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot. Yay. So that's going to be kind of our goal for today. And my job is I'm the ringleader. I get to kind of facilitate and talk, and I'll talk about some things and introduce some topics. But I'm really hopeful that all of you, because we have such great expertise in the audience today, all of you bring up your thoughts. And again, you're welcome to participate through chat. You could raise your hand or you could just talk. It's totally up to you. The idea is to have a conversation today where we can have some fun and just kind of talk, get to know each other a little bit more. So our first topic of discussion for our fun today is going to be with Mike Williamson. All right, Mike, take it and run. Yay, Mike. Yeah.
Run away. Great. Greetings again, everybody. The voice you're hearing is Mike Williamson. And so Brad asked me to lead, MC this portion of our presentation. I think mainly because I do teach at Cal State Northridge. I teach accessibility and assistive technology in quite a few courses there. I also run the assistive technology certificate program at Cal State Northridge, excuse me. We don't have any, I don't teach anything at CU yet, but that is a yet. We're trying to work on figuring that out. I see Laura and Rachel smiling at that as well. So that's a goal of ours to move forward with. So anyway, enough babbling by me. The question here is, how do you design curriculum with a focus upon accessibility? And I'm going to throw that question out there, but Brad, I don't know if you wanted me to chime in and talk about what I do, or if we're just pausing, letting other folks jump in and talk. And then I don't want to affect anybody's answers and say, well, this is what I do, and this is the right way to do it, and then have silence. So Brad, I'm going to pause and let you answer my question before we move forward with that question.
Yeah, and I thought what we could do is if anybody has their thoughts about what do you do to design curriculum with a focus upon accessibility. I'm curious if anybody else has any thoughts out there, things that you're doing in your classes. As you're thinking, and I know Mike's got some good information for us to share in a little bit. One thing I'm really interested in is just the +1 attitude. When I work with faculty, it's not about doing everything at once. It's almost too much. But what's one thing we can take on right now to make a difference? That's something I've been interested in. Oh, Kath has a great resource in our chat today, making accessible bite size. That is a great one. Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts, people?
Kath, if you've got your microphone, I know that it's probably self-explanatory to say make it bite-sized, but what does that mean? What does that look like when we say, hey, let's make it manageable and bite-sized?
I guess, you know, when we're experts in different areas, we tend to take it for granted that things are easily understandable. And when we break it down and sort of pre-digest information for folks, it's a great way to make it less daunting. You know, when I'm doing alternate format or something like that, I reach back to the professor if I need questions on what the content is really about. But when it comes to accessibility, we're the experts, so we have to make it more easily understandable. It shouldn't have to be daunting.
That's a great one.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that wasn't planned. That wasn't planned ahead of time. Kath just came in with a great response. And I think that's huge. A huge point to make is, you know, we have accessibility expertise. Some of us in this meeting have this accessibility expertise, and we know what we know, right? And we don't know what other people don't know, if that makes sense. And so it's easy for us to say, well, just do this, and this, and everything's great. But that assumes that individuals have that prerequisite knowledge, and that's not always the case. So making sure that we provide that prerequisite knowledge, and as Kath said, make sure it's in small amounts, so we're not overwhelming any individual, and making them feel like, well, if I want to do something accessible, it's way too much, and I'm just not going to do it. That's the biggest deterrent for faculty, for anybody making anything accessible, is not feeling like they're supported, and feeling like they're giving a directive without that support, or without that level of understanding. So anyway, I go on and on and on, but that's a really good point, Kath. Thank you.
Thank you, Kath. And, you know, as to follow up, Diana had a great idea in here about, and she put it into chat, about follow the 8 cores of digital accessibility when designing any digital content. Diana, would you mind speaking to that? Would that be all right to kind of, what are those 8 core you were talking about?
Yeah, no problem with that. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on everyone and every person that has studied accessibility for a while. Those are something that I just came up on my own after kind of reviewing all of the accessibility guidelines that are out there that, as you know, Mike, there are a lot. But pretty much the ones that I follow is, number 1, always use headings. Number 2, the text formatting, meaning sans serif font, that is a minimum of 12 points. The line spacing is enough, at least 1.15 points. Using the embedded formatting that is within Canvas or Word or Excel, not just making things bolded and italic, because we think that visually speaking, they look better and they get the attention of people. But unfortunately, for those ones that use screen readers, it's not different. So using the ones that are actually built in, it will give them that little extra help for those users that use screen readers. When it comes to tables, actually, somebody was talking about tables. I have the 3 rules of specify the header rows, do not leave cells in blank, and do not merge or split cells. The scripted hyperlinks, I can go really deep into that, but I don't want to take your time. Alternative text for any graphics, images, objects, color and contrast between foreground and background, and reading order. And finally, the accessibility checker. That is not the greatest tool that programs have, but it gives you a really good head start.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. And you actually answered some of the questions that come up. Joan had a question about the tables. So thank you so much for reaching that and reaching out to that. And a lot of other people were talking about in our chat here. We've got some great thoughts about kind of, ways to talk to your accessibility specialist, like a Rachel on campus, which is always a good way. Chunking things, as AW put it, and assess the schema. I'm really glad you mentioned the assess part in there. I think that's so important. And some other ones, the headings of documents. Thank you for that addition from the street. Yes, I like that a lot. And I like that. Dustin had some good comments in there too about making sure the headers are formatted to stand out from other data cells and keep cell structure even. And refrain from merging or splitting cells. So we have a lot of similarities in there that are really, really nice about ways of making that content accessible. Are there any other, Mike, anything you'd want to follow up with?
Yeah. So the interesting thing here is we throw out a question of how do you design curriculum with a focus upon accessibility? And we've got, as Brad pointed out, we've got some similarities, but we've also got people saying this and this, and what I'm doing on screen is moving my hands left to right around the screen. Like there's so many things that we could do, right, to design a curriculum with a focus on accessibility. So saying what asking that question is kind of a loaded question because there's so many different things to do. So I'm going to throw another question out to everybody, and maybe raise your hand or maybe I guess you can respond with true or false. True or false? When you create your course content, there is a way to ensure that it's 100% accessible for everybody all the time. True or false? That's a big false from Diana. Okay, absolutely. So I'm just seeing false just jump into the chat. And that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. You're never going to encompass everything in your curriculum, right? So the best thing you can do is be fluid, is be open in your teaching style, in your course content. Get to know your students too, right? I mean, there's these precursor things you can do to designing your content. But you also, when you go into class, need to get to know your students and know what they need. So ask, and you need to be able to quote unquote roll with where and I'm probably gonna have a lot of other faculty members throw garbage at me, but roll with where the class is taking you, right? You have an end goal in mind, but the way you get there has to be fluid if you're going to make an accessible experience for your students, because things will change. And you may have an idea of, hey, I'm going to do things this way, and then realize, oh, crud. That's my technical term there, crud. Oh, crud, I didn't account for X, Y, or Z when I wanted to do this activity or when I made this assignment. And so you need to be able to adapt to that or be open to adapting to that. The next thing about that is when you're designing a curriculum with a focus upon accessibility is find your campus partners. Find other people that are working in accessibility so that, and I think I saw this with quite a few people, have somebody check your stuff, right? And so even if you don't have a team dedicated to accessibility on your campus, you can still find your partners on campus. Maybe they've done some cool things in accessibility and say, hey, I've built this. Can you look at this for me and just see if anything jumps out at you? And so this is really high level stuff that we can do, right? I'm not going to zero in on anything specific, but you know, like I said, know your students, be prepared to be flexible and be fluid and roll with the punches. Find your campus partners that can help you with content or fill in the gaps of knowledge that you may have around accessibility, or even specifically what type of or what different disabilities experience within courses. And I could go on and on and on. So I'm going to stop because I told Brad I wasn't going to be stealing anybody's thunder. But anyway, I'll stop there.
Mike, that we just appreciate your perspective. And, you know, to kind of wrap up topic number one, I was wondering if there's anybody else that would like to kind of talk about what they're doing to design curriculum with a focus upon accessibility. And I wasn't sure if there's anything, Kate, if there's some tools that are out there, you know?
Well, you know, Brad, I was just thinking, I think Mike touched on some areas that I was thinking in my head as we answer this question around designing curriculum with focus upon accessibility, and thinking through the students, thinking through those in your class. I think of the term neurodiversity, and really what this means is kind of just differences within the brains, not deficits. But you're thinking through those students that may be in your class that have different ways of comprehending, of digesting content, of being able to assess their learning. So as a faculty member, looking at ways that you provide feedback, ways that you offer up assignments, how can they submit their assignments? Are there different alternatives besides an exam that you may look at in terms of assessing that learning? And really looking at the outcomes of the course. You know, what do you want students to be able to achieve? Some students need that. They need that end goal so they can work backward and understand what it is you, the instructor, expect of them, the student. So I know that kind of bleeds a little bit into universal design for learning, but in my mind, they're very closely related. And then on another note, I think looking at your course on your mobile device, on your iPad, on your desktop, all of those different avenues may provide a different experience for your students with regard to accessibility. So you yourself can move through all of those different platforms to make sure that it renders appropriately on any given device. And I think even looking at your local university, a lot of them do have resources online with regard to accessibility, but major enterprise level services have that option built in, like Word and PowerPoint. They have accessible templates that you can use. So consider that as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. That's a great summary kind of Mike. And, I'm just watching the chat and seeing what great responses people are putting in there. I wanted to highlight something Laura had put in, that 3 main areas I think about with accessible course experiences: accessible instructional content, accessible interactions in the classroom, and using accessible tools in the classroom. So thank you, Laura, for kind of summarizing some of that. And we've got some great pieces in there. Joan had a question about schemas. I think there was a question about schema before. Joan, I'm just curious, did you get an answer for that?
Yes, thank you. A.W. Lukens told me what it meant. I didn't know what it means. And I guess, Chelsea and I are kind of the same thing, is that you're using some terms that we as faculty are not used to. So we're a little behind some of you. And so as long as we ask our questions, I feel like I can keep up. I'm trying to.
It's great. And we look at today as just a starting point. You have a lot of people that are interested in the same place. And toward the end, there'll be a little sign-up sheet where if you wanted to learn more, we can kind of talk more about this as we go. But I just wanted to make sure we could kind of start a conversation and see, look, we have 73 people that are interested in this and how we can kind of share resources across our systems and talk about things. So this has been great. Web AIM is great. I just love the chat. So I hope people are able to see that chat and kind of go with that. Now, I'd like to move on to the next topic, unless there's something else somebody would like. If there's anything else, any other questions? Oh, what is Web AIM is a question that's out there. What is Web AIM, Michael or Mike?
It's a group. And I'm going to do just a layman. It's a group, an online presence that you can go to get information about accessibility, web accessibility specifically, but also they throw in other items as well. And they have training modules, they have videos that you can watch. It's a really great place to learn this over-encompassing idea of web accessibility. With regard to where do we go for training, just general training, there's lots of places you can go to. And rather than, again, just drop a laundry list at you right now in this presentation, I'm happy to share that information with you. I mean, we on CU Boulder have training modules. Kate Miller at UC Denver does them as well. But then just for public consumption as well, there are a lot of places you can go to get overview training on accessibility. And I'm happy to have that conversation with anybody off of this lunch session or after this lunch session.
And there was a follow-up, anything in lynda.com, I think, is probably the LinkedIn Learning. I'm not sure about that one, but thank you, Diana, for putting in the link for WebAIM. I appreciate that. So, yeah. And I wanted to point out, Laura's been dropping some great resources into chat, focused in on some training that we have available on accessibility for CU Boulder. And I think one of our next steps is, the afternoon is a lot of conversations about micro-credentials, but how do we get these off our campus to everybody's campus? And how do we share some of these resources across? So that, I think, is coming with micro-credential conversations later today. But I like it. Yep. And then Laura, thank you again for publishing all those. You're kind of chat jockeying. You're getting all those good things in the chat. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And one thing that we didn't discuss too much specifically is the LMS, the learning management system. And, a good way to kind of, if you're thinking, what's a first step? Some easy way that I could start thinking about accessibility, following up on the conversation we just had, thinking a little bit about how you organize your modules and you structure the content in your course could be an easy first step, a good place to kind of get started with some of that thinking about the accessibility of your class and how people organize it, thinking about the header structures that are out there. All right, so topic number 2, as we move on, as we're going through our lunch, hopefully everybody's still awake. You know, lunchtime is normally nap time, so hopefully you're hanging in there. But our question number 2 is, how do you design learning experiences that work for all students? That's kind of a question that's out there. And Laura's following up with some information about lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning. So thank you, Laura, for that. Appreciate that. But our topic is, how do you design learning experiences that work for all students? I'm just kind of curious what you think. Drop that topic into the chat just so we have it. Anybody have a deep thought they're thinking about? It kind of follows up to our accessibility before, but if we kind of broaden it and think about all the learning experiences, anything else people would want to add? We got some good things. Presented materials in a variety of ways: podcast, text, transcripts, audio, video. Great. Love that. Very, very nice. One possible first step is just seeking out personal stories and people's experiences. I really like how Kate has mentioned that. And Amelia, thank you so much for putting that in there. As Kate has mentioned, it is getting to know our students and knowing what their needs are is so important. I just love that. So really, really good. Learning styles versus teaching styles is teacher styles is a good one. I think we've all learned that in the world of COVID, you know, as we've adjusted our practices. Anybody want to say anything in particular? Start where the students are. Do they create a game? I actually was teaching a freshman class last year where the last 5 minutes of class, we were playing with different games as kind of an engagement tool. So provide options for format of assignments, essays or podcast videos. I love the game idea. We're getting some great chat going on there. Keep everything varied. Oh, I love that. We're very inclusive of you, Kath. I like that. You know, where you provide things in different ways so that you'll be able to keep that engagement going. I like it. Different means of representation. Oh, Diana, you're leading me up for the next piece. Use resources on our campus. Our library is amazing. I love the libraries. Good people in libraries. I like that. We've got some great stuff out there. And I thought this could be a great way to talk about universal design for learning. And if you think of universal design for learning, it provides a blueprint for creating instructional goals, materials, methods, and assessments that work for everyone, not a single one-size-fits-all solution, but rather flexible approaches that can be customized and adjusted for individual needs. And so I think UDL could be a great starting point, and it really kind of encompasses what we have. Now, I love to throw up this chart, this graph. It's a graphic on the screen just at this time, because it always makes me giggle, because you can see kind of on here, you see where accessibility and universal design are on the left side of the screen, and they kind of overlap. Well, I think all of us on this Zoom call today can think of different ways that accessibility and UDL overlap, or they work together, as Kate had mentioned it. And on this particular graphic, if we look at it, it demonstrates the difference between the overlap between accessibility and UDL. And that perspective, I think, is something you should have as you're looking at this. But the physical learning environment, such as ramps, handrails, and elevators, fall under the domain of accessibility. Content, such as accessible documents and closed captionings, fall under the domains of both accessibility and UDL. Learning, such as enriched options for engagement, content, representation and expression of knowledge, and expert learning, such as resourcefulness, knowledge, drive, and grit, both fall exclusively within the domain of UDL. Well, I look at this and I don't quite agree with it totally. I wonder if you have a different perspective on that, kind of getting to know your students by providing them an opportunity to express their needs. Thank you, AV, for that comment in chat too. But I think it's interesting to look at how accessibility and UDL really work together. It's a together thing. And I think we can each have a different perspective on this graphic of where we think one falls compared to the other. I think they always are something that's really supporting of each other. And when we think about universal design for learning, just to talk a little bit about what universal design for learning is it really is focusing in on kind of the guidelines or tools for implementation. It's kind of that framework to provide an optimized teaching and learning for all people based on scientific insights into how humans learn. And these guidelines offer a set of concrete suggestions that can be applied to any discipline or domain to ensure that all learners can access and participate in meaningful, challenging learning opportunities. And if we go into one of these networks, like the recognition network, the what of learning, as we've seen kind of in our chat, this is the provide multiple means of representation. How do we represent the material that we have? And ways that we could do that, think about it as your course content. So if we're really thinking about UDL and ways of providing multiple means of representation, reading on-screen text aloud and describing images for low vision users or students joining by phone. Lena today is also on a street corner. So thank you for joining us today. Provide information and instructions in multiple formats. We've been talking about that. Include visuals, audio, and or video as appropriate. Provide alt text on images, descriptions, or graphics. Ensure the audio is captioned or transcribed. And the underlines on this slide, if you have it, actually will take you to more resources on that content. So you're welcome to check those out. Share accessible versions of reference materials, back to the awesome libraries again that we were talking about in chat. In advance, share the worksheets, the handouts, the slides in advance of class. Use Census Access to create accessible PDFs if you have that tool available, or Ally at the CU Denver campus, I believe is the tool there. Word documents can easily customized by the users, as Kate's mentioned. A lot of those enterprise-wide tools will work across. Adopt text with digital versions for students, not just the paper-based versions, and provide feedback in a variety of formats. One thing when we were talking earlier in our prompts was we didn't really talk about the feedback side of things, and how important providing feedback in multiple formats is also part of a way of engaging our students. So when you're thinking about representation of UDL, these are just some quick little things that could help. If we think about the strategic network, or the how parts of learning, that's really providing multiple means of action and expression. How do they show their learning? And if we think about those providing multiple means of action and expression, varying response options, speaking, chats, polls, clickers, free writing, nonverbal feedback tools in Zoom, those are all examples of those varying response options. And so it's a really important thing. Rethink what class participation is, and taking that to somebody else in your department or an instructional designer is great. And I love how Lena is adding that allow students to get their participation grades in different ways, not just by speaking up. Thank you very much. I like that. Offer synchronous and asynchronous options, and invite students to moderate or co-facilitate class activities. Something we tried when COVID hit at CU Boulder is we spun up something called Tech Co-Pilots, where we created a group of about 100 student workers that helped faculty that just didn't quite have the skill set to be able to teach in hybrid environments, or that this was new to them, this way of teaching. And providing students a voice in that class was just an amazing process for the instructor, but also those students that participated, and they were able to keep the engagement going for the students in the class. So I really am a big fan of inviting students into our processes, and allow students to engage via different models or methods or modes, however it works for you, as we've kind of talked about. Support collaborative learning, leverage supported academic tools like we were just talking about. I see Nearpod and Kahoots is showing up in our chat, but also Google Documents, Padlet, Flipgrid work out great. Oh, Doris has added some stuff about Tech Co-Pilots. Thank you, Doris. Use breakout rooms for small group discussions and activities. Bridge in-person and remote students with a buddy system, back to using the students in class. If you're doing a hybrid, what if one student was remote, one was in person, and they were buddying up, helping each other? I just can't get around how important having our students be part of our processes are. Structure and organize the Canvas sites. We were just looking at some modules, and support executive functioning. Time managed prioritization, breakdown of complex tasks. My kids are kind of at that college age, and I know how important it is for those executive functionings, time management in particular for the high schoolers or the college kids, and making sure they know how that this big paper that's due at the end of the semester isn't, just to do the night before. You break it up over time and work on it bit by bit. So those executive functionings are so important. And I just wanted to hit on one last network of UDL, and I'll stop my little babble. But if we talk about that effective network, the why of learning, it's providing multiple means of engagement. And when we think about that, it's incorporating those learning activities or the active learning tools and techniques into our classroom. And we have a little conversation going on, is Nearpod and Kahoots accessible? That's a really good question in our chat. I don't know if anybody has an answer to that. I haven't checked those two out. I've been using more supported tools that Mike has already tested on our campus. So I don't know if anybody has an answer to Nearpod or Kahoots, but I was thinking about that one. It's relatively accessible. Mike says, thank you. But thinking about the engagement of students, highlight the relevance of the course activities to personal, professional, and or academic goals. We heard about that in an earlier presentation today, talking about kind of the personas of our different students and figuring out how to tie our work to their needs. Foster community, those student building community, facilitate introductions and icebreakers, enable Zoom chat like we're doing today, where that chat is taken off. I love it. Invite students to co-host Zoom sessions. I do that when I teach. I let students run it every week, and they can be the ones to help me or let me know if I miss something, because I'm really good at missing things in chat. Promote self-assessment and reflection. The metacognitive side of our teaching is so important to our students, and conduct ongoing formative assessments and solicit feedback from students. And then, we're all talking about this engagement and how important it is, but permitting choice and providing options is really a big one in there. And this kind of talking about UDL, these last couple slides really are just a summary of what you've already said. Mike, would you like to add something to that?
Sorry, Brad, I just didn't want to interrupt you when you're on a roll here.
Yeah.
But something that has come out, and I think it was Aziz. I thank you for asking the question about, well, is it accessible? Collaboration tools are great. Collaboration environments are great. But again, we go back to what we started with, and make sure you understand your students, who is able to engage in those types of environments, who is able to engage in that polling software. And, at the start of class, say, hey, I'm planning to use X, Y, or Z. And let people know that you're going to be utilizing or plan to be utilizing this technology. And then if you get told, hey, I can't do that, then go back to the drawing board and find something else. But I think that's a huge point to make when we're talking about these UDL topics as well. Is these things are great, but also we can never forget about, go back to the students, understand who's taking those classes. Pause. Also, I want to make sure that I point out that UDL and accessibility are not mutually exclusive. Okay, it's not either or. It's not, hey, I did my preemptive UDL checks on my course, and now I don't have to do anything more. We're going to roll forward full force. That's not the case. So just because we're thinking, and so let me pause. When we think about UDL, I like to think of UDL as a thought process that you have, right? I'm thinking about other users, other people in my course, and thinking about how they might best engage with my environment. That doesn't mean that again, that we stop there, because then we have to then think about accessibility, because there are people that are utilizing screen reading technology. There are people that are using ASL interpreters. There are people that are using different technologies that need that for access and accessibility. So again, not mutually exclusive. We still need to take into account those things. And again, going back to something like a breakout room, if you've got a single ASL interpreter in your class and you go into breakout rooms, it's hard for, if you've got multiple people that need that ASL interpreter, it's hard if they're not all in that same breakout room, or captioning, or so on and so forth. So again, just things to consider as we go down this path. Sorry, Brad, I went off on a tangent there, but
I love it. And Kate, you were going to say?
I just wanted to add into that. So, and there's also a very key difference between an accommodation, which is regulated by the law. And as a faculty member, a staff member within the university, we need to make sure that we adhere to those accommodations. So a lot of what Mike was talking about may be in the form of accommodation, but with a sense of UDL, designing in that sense does make it beneficial for all of the students, including students that may have accommodations. So just wanted to point that out. And also agreeing with Mike in the sense that technology is wonderful, and we've got all of these really cool tools that we can utilize in our course, but never underestimate the power of simplistic design that's very straightforward and very clear to your students, so that the learning itself is not hindered by unnecessary, flashy, fun design. So be mindful of that as well.
Oh, that is just so wonderful. And Lena, you're back in a room again. Wow.
Yeah, I made it home. So I just wanted to add one more thing to what Kate was saying, and that was, the key is try not to be fearful about having students with disabilities or different abilities in your classes, and go ahead and ask them, what do you use to take surveys? What do you use to chat on? What tools work for you? That way we can use those in the class and make sure that you're feeling like you can access everything. So a lot of times ask the student what tools they're using, or even ask the disability coordinators what particular tools that student might need. I know as an assistive technologist, when I assess students, that's the first thing I do. I say, what devices do you have? What assistive technology do you use currently? Is there anything that you've tried that just never works for you? I think it helps to start with the student, and don't be afraid.
You know, and I just cannot thank you enough. Those were wonderful comments by Mike and Kate and Lena. Yes, it really is about that student, and things are not mutually exclusive. The idea is that they all work together, kind of like inclusive design that Kath was talking about earlier today. These things really are complementary. Kath, was there something you wanted to add?
There is. You know, I just wanted to also mention that, you know, it doesn't have to be just you and the student. I often talk about the DSS office and IT as other resources for you as the teacher, the professor, to help understand.
I like it. Yes, it is so important.
Just reach out.
Just reach out. I love that. And sometimes it's hard to do. We get in our bubble. We're working on what our tasks are. We're just trying to burn down that list of tasks, and taking that time to stop and reflect is that mindfulness again. It's really good at UD practices or inclusive practices too. So really, really like it. And boy, the chat is just awesome. I really like hearing about 3D graphics that work well for students, and, you know, good examples in there. That is wonderful. So very cool. Now, I just wanted to follow up with two last little things about UDL before we run out of too much time here. The Universal Design for Learning, it's in our presentation here, but it does have like a guidelines. As you were saying, it's not the end all be all, as Kate was also mentioning. It's just a helpful, you know, framework to think about. And I look at this list and I'm like, oh crap, I can't do all of this. No, it's not meant for that. It's meant for picking and choosing a couple things and working with it. And, you know, accommodations are never going to go away, but sometimes UDL will help meet those needs and make things more accessible for all of our students, or at least more engaging for all of our students. And the way that it's set up in that graphic organizer is there's a principle like we discussed, you know, provide multiple means of engagement. There's the guideline, like provide options for recruiting interest. And then, you know, minimize threats and distractions. You're probably like, what the heck is that? You know, if you look at that as a checkpoint of something, well, that could be like we were talking about the flashy blippy things on the screen that cause problems. That's minimizing threats and distractions. So it's just kind of a neat way of looking at things. And we're running short on time, so I'm going to skip that last topic. But I know we have about 5 minutes left of our time today. And one thing I just wanted to follow back on is just to take some time to kind of just reflect on today. And for you, you know, what is one takeaway from this session that you want to explore? Is there something that you heard today from Kate or from Laura or Rachel that's in there, you know, from Mike that is interesting to you that you'd like to learn more about? And Lena, of course, from her double locations. Thank you so much. I like that. You know, is there something you want to know more about as we have our last 5 minutes in there? Is there something else that is catching you while we have our little time here at the end that you'd like to follow up on?
We should do a video series of Lena on the sidewalk, or Lena from the sidewalk. I think that's I think we're $1 million thing there.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
I love it.
I used to do a lunch and learn with Lena, very alliterative. I really do think sometimes those quickie 5-10 minute classes right before lunch for faculty and staff, those were well attended because they were short, one feature. What do you want to know? I'll open up my assistive technology lab, teach you that skill right then and there in 10 minutes. So always feel free to reach out to all of us. It's our job to help faculty and staff on our campuses.
Yes, and we'd love to be able to work with you more. Like, we'd like to break down some of the barriers that we have across our different campuses and organizations and see where are those similarities? Where can we share some things in there? And so Dustin's got some great things, just wonderful comments in chat. But yeah, are there things you want to know more about as time goes on? And our last Q&A question for today is really, is there anything that you are still confused about or that doesn't make sense? We did use some terminology today that was a little bit new for people. And so if there's anything else you need, please know to follow up with us and let us know if there's anything else. I wasn't sure, Kate, Laura, Rachel, or Lena, anybody have anything, last little bits you'd want to talk about or things you want to follow up with that came up?
I'll just jump in briefly. I've just been dropping a lot of resources into the chat as we go. We have a lot of free public resources on our website. And so definitely feel free to reach out to us if you have questions about any of that, whether or not you're at CU. We want our materials to be useful and understandable no matter where you are in terms of your knowledge about accessibility. So I highly please encourage you to check those out and let us know. I did want to highlight, Jeff had a really great question in the chat. How do I ensure that I'm thinking about undiagnosed or unfamiliar conditions to ensure a truly inclusive environment? And I think this is really, really big. So undiagnosed, that points to, there are so many people, students who may not know that they have, a disability until late in their college career or even afterwards. And so I think that's where UDL comes in terms of the more options you can give people for how they interact with the content, the better off everyone's going to be in being able to kind of choose their own adventure there. In terms of unfamiliar conditions, that's one that, working in this field, I still think about every day in terms of, okay, let's trying to find resources to keep learning about different aspects of disability that I'm not familiar with. So really with that one, it's just keep reading, keep learning, keep asking people about their experiences.
Oh, thank you, Laura. That's a great way.
Can I piggyback? Because Laura brings up that's huge. So again, I don't want anybody in today's session to think I have to think about all the potential disabilities that are there, right? Again, I'm going to go back to what Lena and Kath and everybody have been saying is at the beginning of class, make your class welcoming for folks to come in and say, I have a problem with this, or I can't, when we do this, when in the past, when this has happened, I'm not able to do it. Because again, we're as faculty, we're less concerned about a specific diagnosis of a disability and more concerned about, hey, where are these sticking points? Where are you having trouble? So that I can help figure out how to make this less troublesome for you or not troublesome for you, right? Because again, trying to encompass every disability type, every individual is not going to happen. And so cut yourself some slack in that regard and have those conversations right off the bat, that welcoming environment of saying, hey, I don't have this knowledge, but I am welcome to feedback and let me know how I can make this a better experience for you. And I know as faculty, that's tough for me to hear at times too, because I have a way I want to do things. But at the end of the day, I want my students to be successful. And that's what a lot of us are here for.
I think that's what we're all here for. I like it. It's so true. So true. Well, I have up on the screen and I posted into chat. If you're curious to do more with this and want to kind of join a community as we're building it, feel free to scan this, or there's a little link in our chat, a little bit.ly link that would let you sign up for a little Google form. And it just is a way to kind of capture who's interested in kind of moving forward. And I'll see what I can do to kind of build some community over time and see where we can go and share these wonderful resources. I think our session's just about at the end, but I think, and I could ask the session host, but in our chat, in the upper right corner of our chat is a ... button. If you click on the ... I think there's ability to save chat. So if you'd like to save the chat, and session host, you'll have to let me know if that's working or not. I'm seeing it as a host, so I'm not sure if participants see it also. But the idea is to be able to save chat if you want any of these amazing resources that have been shared. Has anybody been able to save the chat?
I think it should work for everyone.
Woohoo! Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks. And Kate, Rachel, Laura, Lena, Mike, and captioner Richard, session host. Thank you everybody for being part of this today. Oh, QR code is disabled. I'll fix that. Yeah, I guess it's just going to be the link also. And there we go. Yeah. Any last minute thoughts or things we need, session host?
Just get in touch. Feel free to get in touch.
I like it. That's the big one. Yes. Anything else, anybody? We really appreciate you attending today.
Just wanted to flag that there is an accessibility discussion channel in the Slack group. So I'm in there, and I think probably the other presenters will be in there if y'all want to drop questions later or follow up on anything.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I hope you all look at this as a start of a conversation, not an end. This is just the beginning of us being able to communicate more. And I can't wait to work more with Kate. Just saying, gotta say, Lena, my daughter's going to go to school in Colorado Springs someday, so I'll be down there more. So yeah. Well, thank you everybody for your time today.
Ciao.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.